What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy, and man, I have just had like the perfect storm of people saying things that are maybe not directly related, but like when combined can very much describe my thoughts regarding our just current political scene and how ridiculous it's gotten, about as well as I can describe it in words. And some of this stuff just came to mind as I was going through, what other people said and sorting out my thoughts connected with that. But I'm going to start it off with pretty recently on a Sunday morning at church. I was, volunteering with tech crew stuff like I usually do. And just before our production meeting, as it's called, before, we do the kind of main rehearsal pre-service to make sure everything's all good and we're all on the same page. Just before that, the campus pastor there was talking about how, we've pretty much gotten to the extremes of, the spectrum, or at least that's a lot of what we see in the news and hear, and a lot of people have started communicating as such, because such things, like, the more it's communicated, the more normal it seems, and it seems less extreme and ridiculous the more you hear about it. So, anyway, yeah. So anyway, he mentioned how we've gotten to these extremes, and people seem to think that, well, I mean, this is kind of my thought weaved in there, but what he really said right after that was, okay, if we've gotten out to these ends of the spectrum, we need to bring it back into the middle if we're going to really help the situation and, ease up on the extremism. What I thought as well is people seem to keep thinking that, oh, if I just add more of the other extreme, it'll bring it back to the middle and will calm everything down. But, to quote a line from a Skillet song, from their song Rise Up, from their latest album, not that that really matters, but anyway, the Skillet song Rise Up, the start of the second verse says, day, night, the pendulum is swinging, left, right, and that just so perfectly made the analogy for me there, because it's people seem to keep thinking that regarding our politics and how extreme it's gotten, that we need to add more of the other extreme to fix the situation and get it back to neutral, but it's behaving like a pendulum. So if it's on one side and you try and push it back to the other side, a pendulum is designed to not lose momentum. Or at least if it does, it loses it very, very slowly. So if you push it and add more momentum going the other direction, when it's at the extreme, then it's just going to push it further back that way than it would have gone before. So now you've got the pendulum swinging even further to the extreme. So then people on the other side are going to think, oh, no, we need to push it back the other way. So then they push it back the other way, and it gets even further on the other extreme. So it just keeps building up more and more and more until, before you know it, we don't even have a regular pendulum anymore. We've got it going around in circles nonstop, and it just is completely non-functional anymore. If a pendulum ever gets to that point, it's darn near out of control, and you can't really stop it without providing some sort of force that is stronger than the system itself and is obviously outside of the system itself. So, I just found that, a really darn near perfect analogy for what's going on these days. we don't need the extremes. We don't need more of the extremes in our politics. We need stuff in the middle. We need action to happen towards the middle of the swing. And like, if it's swinging one way, we need to, towards the middle, act the other way. That's how you slow a pendulum down. You get it on the downswing and ease the momentum in the direction that it's headed. Or at least that's the best, safest way to slow down a pendulum. The pastor who was preaching was dropping some major truth bombs, and I'm going to get to that later. But part of that got me thinking of just how a lot of people are looking at the situation right now, and the reality of things is not quite what it seems. So right now, a lot of what we see is political extremism on both sides, I would say. Because people seem to keep thinking that, going to one extreme will balance out the other extreme rather than doing the whole pendulum thing like I just described. So we've got a lot of political extremism going on, and that's what we see a lot of currently. But it's almost like a triangle pyramid thing. Picture the whole like Maslow's hierarchy of needs type triangle, where it's like you've got the smallest thing that seems most upfront, obvious, and pressing at the top, but it's actually the smallest thing. And then you've got other layers that are underneath it. And without those lower layers, the thing at the top wouldn't even be happening in the first place. I realize that's not exactly what Maslow's hierarchy of needs does, but it's just like picturing the whole triangle divided into different sections is what I was getting at with that. Anyway, so if you picture a triangle like that, at the very top, we've got our political extremism going on. That's what seems the most pressing and obvious, but it's not actually the root cause of things. There are multiple layers underneath. I'm probably going to get into at least 3 here, I think. So, anyway, I should probably just get to it, otherwise this is going to be a crazy long video. So, the layer I would put underneath that is basically just a power struggle. And, I mean, it's pretty obvious to most people that there's a power struggle going on, especially between, Democrats and Republicans or whatever, because we see a lot of this political stuff that goes on. But there's a good chance that it's also a power struggle on the part of corporations and basically rich people with boatloads of money to just throw at something. I'm actually going to throw out a quote from a song that came out in 1990, the year I was born. Good stuff. And actually also, oddly enough, one of my favorite songs that I liked to play when I was really into Rock Band, especially Rock Band 3, I would play that a lot. Drums and guitar in particular. And this was one of my favorite songs to play on both of those. Not so much to sing, but I just, as I was thinking through all this song came to mind. The song Souls of Black from the band Testament. And let me make sure I get the right quote here that I'm looking for. So, literally, the first lyrics of the song, this is back in 1990. The first lyrics of the song say, "Can't you see that the world we live in, political lines are just corporate decisions? Although some people think it's political lies. I could see it being either lies or lines. But the link between political stances and statements and actually, those being the views of corporations who are honestly backing a lot of these politicians and encouraging them to think and do and say certain things and promote certain things that are really part of the corporate agenda that is only providing funding for, the politicians' campaigns so that, basically, you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of thing, because the corporations themselves cannot directly control Congress per se, but they sure can fund the people in Congress and try and, push them to do certain things. So there's another aspect of the whole power struggle that is really underneath the political extremism layer. And yes, I know I said it before, but I just want to say again, I will also grant that there's probably a bit of a power struggle going on between the Democratic and Republican parties and such. So, again, what we really need to fix that is not more encouragement of the extremes. What we need is more centered, neutral action towards the middle. But, anyway, so underneath that layer of power struggle, I would put greed. Again, this applies probably to the politicians and to the corporations. I would put greed, which could also be deemed, lust for power or money. And I think maybe you could see a little bit, if you're smart enough, the trend of where I'm going with this. Because greed is a far more common thing than power struggles, exactly. Greed often causes a lot of power struggles. In fact, power struggles almost never happen without some greed or, a lust for money or power or recognition or something like that. And there's also selfishness in there. Like, if everybody was selfless and they were humble and not greedy, then we wouldn't have these big power struggles. We would work things out in a calm, respectable manner to resolve whatever issues are going on. But people are greedy and they want more, and they're proud, and they want fame and recognition and possessions and all these different things. And that causes the power struggles that are happening in the first place. And, with that kind of thing being said, that's where we get into some of the almost tactics that are being used in our politics today. It's all part of the power struggle, but it comes back to pride and greed, because without pride, then we probably wouldn't have, we wouldn't have any of this going on. And without pride in something we really shouldn't have pride in or loyalty to, meaning political parties, without an exorbitant amount of pride and loyalty to those, we would not have these power struggles or anything like that either. So that brings to mind something I really, really, just within the past hour, saw one of my old college professors post, and I'm not going to say who it is, but he points out, quote, observations on successful political strategies. And if this doesn't just paint a ridiculously accurate picture of modern day politics, then I don't know what does. So there are 5 different steps to this, or 5 different parts, however you want to call it. Step 1. If you repeat an accusation enough times, people on your side will believe it, regardless of how spurious the claim is. Spurious, I'm never totally sure on the pronunciation of that word, but basically, how ridiculous or, violently charged it is, essentially. If you repeat an accusation enough times, people on your side will believe it, as proven by our current politics. Trump in particular, I would say, but, it also happens on the other side of the political spectrum. Step 2, or part 2. People tend to believe bogus claims about those who they perceive as enemies, so portray the other side of the argument as enemies. Very much what's going on in today's politics. Democrats do this with the Republican Party, Republicans do this with the Democratic Party, and certain people within that are very, very good, ? Good meaning actually bad, but they do this efficiently. Step number 3, tell your people, on your side, that they're intelligent for believing what you tell them, and congratulate them for rejecting the lies of the other side. Simultaneously call your opponents stupid and evil because they don't believe what you say. It's kind of an extension of number 2, but much more specified. And again, I see a lot of this in today's politics. Step number 4, manipulate your side into hysteria by using politically motivated scare tactics designed to appeal to the concerns and fears of your voting base. The Republicans do this by appealing to, conservative Christians, saying that the Democrats are trying to, get rid of the Bible, faith, God. Democrats do this by saying that, Republicans are leaning towards fascism, that they're, just refusing to accept the truth that the news media presents. And the fact that, the right has made enemies with the media is something that we should worry about because, they're ignoring critical information and things like that. I mean, there are probably far better examples than that, but that's just what came off the top of my head. And step number 5, emphasize that your opponents deceitfully use the first 4 steps, but insist that you're telling the facts and not using these tactics yourself. And again, that is pretty much if we all take a step back from what both sides of the argument are spewing out there, it's pretty clear that both sides are using these tactics, and yet when they communicate it to us, they want us to believe that it's only the other side using these tactics, and, their side is the one that's being honest and truthful and is actually looking out for us. But no. It's all just deceit and greed and pride feeding into all of this. And anyway, that breakdown probably could have been more so a part of the power struggle thing, but without greed or fear or this extreme sense of loyalty to one entity, that the power struggle wouldn't happen. So that's why I kind of mentioned it at the layer below. All right, so now I'm going to get into the final layer that I'm going to mention, the absolute base layer, without which none of this would happen. And here's the truth bomb that the pastor preached on, and that is the fact that when it all boils down to it, it's all because of sin. Point blank. Sin. Nothing else. Sin is at the heart of it. All the political struggles that we've had recently, in fact, everything that is wrong with this world can be attributed to sin. The only reason there is any death or disease or natural disasters or anything like that, the only reason any of it exists is because of sin. This world is fallen and broken because of sin. The world was perfect before sin. Garden of Eden, everything was great. But then sin came in, and it broke things. And it continues to break things. So, if sin is at the heart of it, then in order to remove this triangle of struggle that we have here, this triangle that appears to really result in, political extremism and all that, we need to just knock it down at the root. The root cause of all of this is sin. So, in order to properly counteract all of this, we don't need politicians, we don't need political parties. We need God, we need Jesus. We need the only thing that can fight and remove sin, which is faith in Jesus Christ and his redemptive work on the cross. Period. That's it. There's nothing else that we could truly use to get rid of the root issue of all of this. So, we don't need to rely on these political parties. The Democratic Party is not the party of God. The Republican Party is not the party of God, no matter how much they try and claim that they are. They both have flaws. They both have shortcomings. They both do things that are sinful and are not what God wants. Point blank. We don't need the political parties and their increased, continued extremism to fix this. If we try and rely on those, we're just going to keep pushing the pendulum harder and giving it more momentum to get more extreme. We need Jesus at the center of it all. We need Jesus to bring us to the center of this, to bring us together with one cause, one purpose of toppling this triangle of extremism that is founded on sin and slowing the momentum of the pendulum that has brought about the extreme politics that we see today. And there was more in the sermon about how, Jesus is the one who rescues us, which is the exact point that I'm trying to get at here. There was something else the pastor mentioned. I might be getting the exact wording wrong, but it was something to the effect of the rescuer, the nature of the rescuer is dependent upon what we need rescue from. So, like, If there's a fire in your house, you call the fire department. If the problem is that somebody got shot, you call an ambulance. If the problem is, there's a bank robbery, you call the police. If the problem is sin, you call Jesus. That is what we need. Nothing short of that. And nothing beyond that. Not that anything is beyond Jesus. But some people try and add things like a political party or a certain level of theology, like a certain denomination or a certain stance on different faith issues, beliefs, whatever. But Jesus is all that we really need there. If we try and stop short of Jesus, we're not going to get the results that we need. If we try and add more than Jesus, we're not going to get the results that we need. Jesus and only Jesus will fix this. Now, one last thing I want to mention really quick, since I'm on the faith aspect of this. The fact that we're getting more politically extreme should not surprise a single Christian out there, especially any Christians who have read the book of Revelation. We all know that stuff gets messed up before God fixes it. It gets really messed up before God fixes it, okay? I'm thinking Antichrist, Mark of the Beast, all that kind of stuff. So, I'm not saying we should try and bring that about, but if this is ultimately communicated to us as part of what's going to happen, if this is ultimately part of God's plan to reconcile us, to reconcile heaven and earth, and the broken nature of creation as it stands, then we should not be surprised by this. Again, we don't want to encourage it, but, come on. This shouldn't surprise anybody. Especially not Christians. So, anyway. That pretty much sums up everything that I have. All of my thought processes at the moment regarding our political climate and the extremism therein. I would hope that maybe we could settle things down in the future, but if not, I can rest in the fact of knowing that ultimately God wins. And even, when it gets super duper completely extreme and broken and the entire world seems like it's fallen away from God, God is still stronger. God is still better. God is still going to be victorious in the end. So, anyway, that's all I've got. And this video has definitely been long enough. So, as always, like, share, subscribe, click the bell. You know what to do. And if you don't, just look down in the description for more info on my social media pages, how to find and follow and interact and all that good stuff. And, of course, leave your comments down below with any thoughts you might have related to this or other video ideas. Whatever you have for me, let me know down below. So that's it. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you for the next video. I have no clue what it's going to be on. At least, any next topic thing that I'm going to talk about. But whatever the case is, until next time, stay cool, people.